What keeps me driven? I think half of it is it's part of who you are. I probably own 2 or 3 dream cars, but that doesn't mean there aren't 10 more on the list.
What up, everybody? Derek G here for Slide. Today's episode is a driven episode. This is about a real cool guy named Bret, based out of New Orleans. So a little rewind to the situation. Rick, he was going out there to go shoot a video for a song he did with Currency, and they were going out there to shoot the video. We talked about getting his car out there, so he figured the whole thing. He found a person to trailer the car from Miami all the way to New Orleans, and then he needed to find a place to store the car, receive the car when it got there. Fast forward, he spoke to the guy on the phone. He said he was on the phone with the guy for about an hour or so. Super cool dude. I never got to meet him, unfortunately. I was supposed to fly out to New Orleans from Orlando, and then we had one of these big storms come through, cancel my flight. I was actually on my way to the airport from the hotel in Orlando, and in morning traffic, I got the notification through email that my flight was canceled and my money was refunded. So I turned back around. We had some family from out of town visiting, hence why we were in Orlando. You know, everything happens the way it needed to. Rubio, which I introduced to the guys, ended up flying out from Miami with them. It was Rubio, Uncle Luke the director, and Rick. They all flew out of Miami or Fort Lauderdale, and they ended up in New Orleans. I didn't make the flight, so they kind of just did what they had to do on the music video side, and then they had talked to Bret about potentially interviewing him and what he does. And this gentleman is a real estate developer, to my understanding, or he buys and flips cribs. I'm not really too sure, but he's also a car dude, a big car dude, and because of that, he ended up buying a building, started a storage facility for car storage. This is his story, this is what he's doing. Here, just watch the episode, let you know a little more about it.
The thing that made me get into this line of work is the natural progression of what you do as a car guy. You work your way up, you get some nicer cars, you work on them. I think that people trust me with their cars because I'm like them. My name's Bret Lebreton. I'm a native New Orleanian. I even went to college here, went to Tulane, so I never really left town. We're out in Metairie, which is a suburb of New Orleans, which actually is the largest population of Louisiana. We have about 500,000 people here in Metairie and about 400,000 in the New Orleans proper area. You almost have to go right back to when you got your passion for cars. And I was about 4.5 years old, and at that time my godmother wanted to bring me to a movie theater. Well, back then you didn't go to the big Palace Theater, which we have a couple of blocks from here, which was 12 cinemas. You went to a movie theater that was just one big screen. So she brings me to a movie, and it was the first time I'd gone to a movie theater. Well, guess what the movie was? It was a movie called Grand Prix with James Garner. And it was a racing movie. And where does a 4.5-year-old want to sit when he goes in a movie theater? Front center. So we go down there. She was my aunt as well as my godmother. She's sitting next to me. She said within 5 minutes of the movie she felt sick because all the race cars were racing right at your face. I walked out of that movie a car guy. I knew that day that I loved cars. And I remember sitting in the front seat of that movie theater at 4.5 years old. The thing that made me get into this line of work is the natural progression of what you do as a car guy. You become a driver, you get a car. It probably isn't the greatest car in the world at first. You work your way up, you get some nicer cars, you work on them. I was always in the garage doing things and cleaning them and doing small repairs. And you get better at it, and you do more, you restore some cars. By the time I got to college, so I'd be 18, 19 years old, I had probably had 10 cars. So besides the fact that you loved what you did, you were passionate about the story and the asset. You take that and it becomes motivation for the next purchase. You know, there's so many different cars out there, there's so many different flavors that if you're a real car guy, you go, oh God, I gotta drive one of those one day, or I wanna own one of those one day. And then you get off in these tangents of cars that were very low production automobiles. One they only made 10 or 15 of. I had mentioned to you earlier, there's one called the Cheetah. Well, they only made 13 original cars. And mine's a recreation from all of the original engineering of that car. Well, if I were to purchase one of the real ones, they'd be about $500,000. My car's about 1/5 of that. but it looks exactly like it. So that's the whole idea of doing a recreation or a resto mod, you know, because the car that's outside, 71 Impala, you'd have to call that a resto mod because it's not the way it was sold off the showroom floor. It's different than it was originally. So there's lots of different kinds of categories of cars. There's lots of different types of personal attachments to cars. I've found over time a lot of people when they grow up, see, I know you can't see it on camera, but there's an image on the wall of a Lamborghini Countach. Well, that was the original Alpine promotional poster for Alpine radios because they put them in Countaches. That exact piece hung on my wall when I was 15 years old. Still have it. And what's funny about it, it's not just the cars that are motivational, it's the things that help promote the cars. That motivated me, and I own an old Lamborghini. I don't own the Countach. I own what was called the baby Countach. It's called a Halpa. Do I own my dream car? The answer is I probably own 2 or 3 dream cars, but that doesn't mean there aren't 10 more on the list. There's always another car on the list. There's always something that you either dreamed about, you were passionate about, or something new that you just see. I don't want to call it a dream car, but I bought one of the new Hummer EV Edition 1s, and it's all electric. And it's super cool. But I couldn't have called that a dream car. Didn't even know about it prior to 3 years from this point. But there are a ton of cars that I would call dream cars. One of my favorite cars that is a road car is called the Lamborghini Miura. They were made between '67 and 1972 in 3 different versions. They sell between, call it $1.5 million and $6 or $7 million a piece now. So that's one. Then there's a Tipo 33. That would be another car. I actually don't have an example of one here. I'd be able to show it to you, even if it's in a model version. Race cars, I actually have a copy of that. It's Chaparral 2. So Jim Hall had a number of race cars that were all called Chaparrals. Well, the Chaparral 2, I think, was one of my favorite race cars on the planet. They're all in a museum in Midland, Texas, and I would probably sell everything I own in order to buy that car. I mean, that's where passion comes in. That's where motivation comes in. I've had a dealership for over 40 years that specializes in vintage and exotic and specialty automobiles. My son owns the aesthetic company called P3 that does all the ceramic coatings, that does all of the detailing. So we have those 2 companies, that's 2 elements. Well, the element I didn't have was storage, but I didn't enter to come into the storage business. I entered by being in real estate and buying a building that I could store my cars in. Well, once I brought about 10 of my cars into the building and told, because I'm in all the clubs, I'm in the Ferrari club, I'm in the Lamborghini club, I'm in the BMW club, the Corvette club, you name it. Once I started telling people I bought a building just to kind of consolidate my cars, everybody started saying, do you have a space for my car? And if I didn't hear at least 6 times, almost verbatim, the same story, if I don't get the car out of the garage so my wife can bring the groceries in when it's raining, I'm gonna get a divorce. So sure, I'll make some space for your car. So we brought it over here, we reorganized the building, we put some cars in here. Within 6 months of being putting my cars in here, I had probably a half a dozen other people's cars in here. So I said, well, gosh, I better make it official. And I turned it into the Motorsports Garage. And at that point, it just grew and grew. This is our 10th year. I have 2 buildings now, over 70 cars in storage, close to 50 in this building. And then the other building is fairly new, less than a year. And ultimately, we'll fill that building too. We'll probably have 50 in each building. I have an older son, and a younger son, my daughter in between. And both of my boys are car guys. But the younger one, who's 28 now, he actually races. He races go-karting. He won his season this year. He's going off, not this weekend, but the following weekend to Texas to go race in the Dallas area at one of the big go-kart tracks there. I've been racing as long as I can remember, probably before I had a formal license. When I was 14 years old, we would do what's called autocrossing. You're racing the clock. You're not racing another person at the same time. So there's cones spread out in a huge parking lot, and you have to run a specific course, and you're timed against other people that have similar cars. Well, I was doing that at 14 and a half years old. I think that people trust me with their cars because I'm like them. I'm a car guy like them. I'm as passionate as they are. And since I have some of my cars here as well, I'm going to take care of my cars like I take care of my clients' cars. I want to make sure that they can enjoy them like I enjoy my cars. That's so important to me because a car guy really is passionate about their own automobile. Well, they need somebody who has that same kind of passion to take care of and manage their assets. What keeps me driven? I think half of it is it's part of who you are. It's part of the people you either hung around with or your upbringing. Part of it is taught, part of it is innate. I think I have the innate part because I'm a perfectionist and I always want to do better in whatever I do. That's inside me. But teaching is the other part, is learning from good people and learning from people that also have similar attributes, like either wanting to be an entrepreneur. I always found myself when I was either in my late teens or in my 20s hanging around people that were 10, 15 years older than me. You don't get that from somebody your same age because we don't have that level of experience. You can only get wisdom from someone who has had a lot of experience. And I think that that's where I drew a lot of mine from.